Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this interview with Alex Matthew, sir, aka the stage name goes Maya the Drag Queen. And this is called Drag and the LGBTQ Flag. So, hello, Alex, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
So, sir, today we are here representing Doctors for a Cause, and today through this interview, I'm hoping that our audience can get to know a lot more about drag culture and the queer communities, mental health also, and so many more aspects to it. And I think it is absolutely amazing to have you here to talk about all these things. So thank you for being here, sir.
Anytime, I'm glad to be here and actually tell people, I mean, especially uh, doctors, so that make them understand more about the community. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad to hear. So, before we begin, so for the people who don't know you, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
So I identify as a queer cis man. Cisgender man basically means that I identify myself with my birth gender. When I was born, I identify myself. So it's called as cis, CIS, gender, gender. And queer, basically what I mean is I don't want to be constructed into any sexuality boxes. I like to be referred to as sexuality is fluid for me, and I perform as a drag queen, known as Maya the Drag Queen. It's almost been 6 years. By this September, I will complete 6 years in performing as a drag queen. And I live in Bangalore right now. My pronouns are he and him out of drag, and she and her in drag. So that's the gist about me in terms of Maya.
Quite a lot to actually go on. That's amazing because there are so many shades to the community. I think it definitely does justice. Also, sir, so can you tell us more about drag?
So drag is an art form. Basically, what it's a beauty of just going on stage and we are dressing up as the opposite sex for entertainment purpose or stage purpose. That's all we are doing. So if a straight man, straight woman wants to get into drag and be a drag queen or be a drag king, they can go ahead and do it. It is not meant to be mixed with sexuality and gender. Is not to be mixed with this art form. Just like how, how there are people who perform Bharatanatyam, there are people who perform Kathak. It's somewhat on those lines. That drag is on those lines, and it's also about shattering gender stereotypes. Who told us that sari is only meant for women, and who told that pant and shirt is only for men? It's meant that it's actually meant to say that hey, you can actually use these form of clothing, and if it really looks good on you, use it. And if you feel like you're one with the whole clothing, then just flaunt with it and be fabulous. So this is what drag is, and drag has started from 17th century when Shakespeare started producing his plays. So that is when women were not allowed to perform in plays or be part of any theatrical production. So that same thing happened in India as well, where from where I come from Kerala. Kathakali, Teyyam, then Yakshagana, and all of these art forms actually have men playing the women roles. So drag has been part of our what do you say art forms. Just that when I started performing, I said drag is an art form, and I can be a character, and I can perform. I can actually celebrate the femininity in me, and that is exactly what I did through drag. So this is a gist about drag. Now, if you want to relate to drag in mainstream, I would say the closest person that did drag is Kamala Hassan in Chaki Chachobis and Ambai Shanmugar. So these are movies that everyone should watch, and you will understand why he was doing drag. And he's an artist, and he just did it because he wanted to get closer to his daughter. So that is the story of the movie. But then we wanted to celebrate our femininity. Every human being has masculinity and femininity, be it of whatever gender. So I wanted to celebrate the feminine side of me. And so, yeah, that's what happened with drag. So this is a gist of drag as an art form.
That is very amazing, sir. And actually, when we think about it, that a girl should wear a sari or guys should wear a shirt and pants, it is all something that is like preformed misconceptions that have just been fed to us since childhood, which is why we end up becoming that. So actually, there's no better way to break it
So
up than through.
even I'll tell you another thing. The blouse that we wear for sari was actually not made by Indians. It was actually made by the British people. Actually, the Britishers found it very awkward. Found it very awkward that why are women being topless, or why are they not wearing anything on their shoulders? So they started making blouses for the women to actually say that we wear tops, we wear shirts and all of that with our skirts. So you also for your sari wear blouses and walk around. So that is how the whole blouse came into picture. It was not part of our Indian culture or anything. If you go back to history, it was actually came about from the British people. Actually, like Indian women were actually very confident with their bodies at that point of time. So it is just that the Western people actually, brought it into our culture, if I have to say it like that.
Yeah. It is actually quite a fun fact, and there are so many little things in history that we end up not realizing, but they play such a significant role. Even the entire thing with the LGBTQ community. So we see the influence of such people spread all across history, but because we don't know it and we haven't seen that in person that much, is I think it's my personal opinion that that is where acceptance lacks because people are not familiar with it. And I think
Yeah,
to make that
and
happen today.
if I have to dive into more of those facts, like people keep saying, "Oh, but in history they have not mentioned anything about queer person and all of that." When we had people from like the Britishers actually eliminating us one by one, whenever they saw a queer person, they used to kill us. They used to persecute us. So we were not allowed to be let live freely. So, they were actually trying to make a society where no queer people live. But, you know, knowing that in history and how it is in the present age, it's not easy to eliminate people from the community. We will still live on. It just proves that we are supposed to be a part of the society. And that is exactly what is happening
Yeah,
right now.
that is amazing. I mean, through this movement is actually so beautiful, and the more you get to know about it, the better your information and your worldview gets. So, are there must be certain misconceptions related to drag that people often target you with, or they look at you through that? So, would you like to share some of them with us?
So, the common misconception that I get is that I'm a transgender or I'm a cross dresser. And no, I keep telling them that I do this only for performance. I do this only for art form. There are trans women who perform as drag queens, but you can't put us in the same box. You have to respect my gender identity as well. And also, there is this whole pretext that we are always sexually starved. We are always looking out for sex. And actually, not all of us are looking out for sex. We just want to live our life, and we're so body positive that we love to, exhibit how we want to be exhibited. Like in terms of, if I want to dress up like a woman and I dress up in a really elegant dress, doesn't mean that I'm calling to have sex. So that is a common misconception that I have to deal with that we hurt people. There are times when people actually say we are out to hurt people. that I will hit somebody if I'm in drag and all. I'm like, listen, that is a really huge misconception. When I go to perform, I only love to
Hmm.
love the other person for who they are and accept the person for who they are, and that's what I do. So these are the common misconceptions and assumptions that people make.
I think people just forget to look at something out of the ordinary as they're still human. And I think that is something we really need to inculcate in ourselves. Also, talking about your stage thing, your version of Cheap Thrills is really famous. I've heard about it. So I was
You want me to
hoping,
sing it?
sure, I think I should definitely get to it. I think our audience will love it.
So I will only sing few lines though, but then yeah. So come on, turn the radio on. It's Friday night and I won't be long. Gotta do my nails, put my high heels on. It's Friday night and I won't be long till I hit the dance floor. Hit the dance floor. I got all I need. Well, I ain't no macho, but I'm a fierce drag queen. Well, so yeah, that's it.
It's really, really good.
Thank you so much for making me sing.
I'm so happy you did that. You agreed to it. I'm sure people will enjoy it a lot. And
Yeah,
it's actually so meaningful.
I'm going to plug in. Like, if you really want to hear my music, you can go and search for my song "Drag Queens" in iTunes, Spotify, and if you want, I can send you even the YouTube link so that you can listen to it.
Sure, it would be an honor. It would generally be an honor. Okay,
Yeah.
so moving on. When did you realize that performing as a drag queen was your identity or like a part of it? So when did that come to you that this is what I want to do and this is how I want
So,
to express myself?
I will not say that on September 2014 it all struck me. It was a process for me. When I was in school, I had this burning desire to be part of a fancy dress competition, but I just didn't know what to do. But then, if you know the movie Bhool Bhulaiya, so there is the Malayalam version of it, Manichitra Tar, where Shobana acted as, as the dancer, the possessed. She was going through multiple personality disorder and all of that. So I chose her character and I went on stage. Dressed in Bharatanatyam costume, I went on stage. And to tell you frankly, I felt like I was another person. There was another person that actually took hold of me and just exhibited this confidence that I've never seen in my life. I had, of course, friends helping me. I had a friend of mine, my classmate, singing the song, another friend of mine reciting the dialogue and all of that. And I lip sync, I dance, I lip sync to the whole dialogue. And then, to my surprise, I won the first prize to the fancy dress competition. And I was so happy to know that, oh my God, finally I got recognized for something. I'm talented in some way, you know. But then, you know how it is, right? When you live in a society where they keep saying that femininity is not, it's not seen in a right way. It took me 10 years of my life. So I did it in 2004 or 5. And then I realized that I should play the part again. So around that time, 2011 is when I went into theater because I'm such a theater kid at heart. I would love performing on stage. 2011, I got into theater in Hyderabad, and then I shifted to Bangalore for better job opportunities. And that is where you know that is when I came to all these theater opportunities and auditions, and I realized there were people were actually looking at my weaknesses. They were saying that, oh, you've got this feminine quality which will not work for our masculine roles. You've got a very thick Mallu accent. Then I took back. I said, listen, they are not giving me roles that I feel good about. So I feel stagnant at this moment. So I started like, let me look into works like movies, books, and see if grab any inspiration. And that is when I came across this movie called as Mrs. Doubtfire. Now, in Mrs. Doubtfire, I saw Robin Williams playing this role of a hippo granny so well. So I was like, if
Yeah.
Robin Williams can do it, I can do it too. And that is when I started creating this character known as Maya, where people were you have got a Malayali accent. I said, okay, fine. I will work well with my Malayali accent, make it funny. And then I've got this feminine thing. I will make her a really gorgeous Malayali woman, come all the way from a village to Bangalore. So with that, I made this character. I did my public debut performance in September 2014 in a restaurant called as, and with that I started getting a lot more performances opportunities. The next month, that is October 2014, I came out of the closet. I said, this is who I am. I am going to perform as a drag queen a lot, and also I'm going to live as a queer cis man. It's been 6 years, and I've been part of so many big platforms like TEDx. I was featured in Vogue India. I was featured in many places. Newspaper, countless number of newspaper articles about me, not just about me as a drag queen, but me as a cis queer man as well. So like that, like my journey has been such that there were ups and there were downs as well. So there were times when people used to not understand me. It was very difficult for me to get jobs because people couldn't understand my identity. Like, oh, he is a guy, but why is he dressing up as a woman? Like that. They were not understanding the whole thing. It was only up till August 2017 when I performed for a nightclub called as Kitty Sue. Mr. Keshasuri, who repealed, Section 377, noticed me. He said, why don't you come and perform for my nightclub and be an employee? And with that, I got the opportunity that I was looking for. I started performing at least once a week in a nightclub. With that, so many other opportunities came. Like I started emceeing for corporate award events. I started going to different places. Like this year, I think beginning of this year before lockdown and coronavirus all happened, we had Bangalore, and I was able to co-host or be a host for it along with another drag queen. And there I was able to meet Usha Uttarji and meet her in person and and perform with her. Perform as in not sing with her. She was singing and we were dancing basically. So
That's amazing.
So imagine, and she's my biggest inspiration. I do a lot of I do a sort of imitation of her as well. I do an impersonation of her as well. So long back, I think 2016 or 15, I did one small video of her singing, and I have it still with me on Instagram. And she saw it, and she told me like I still have that video saved in my phone, and I'm like, I felt so overwhelmed. I'm like, a person like her is recognizing my efforts as a drag queen. So it's been quite a journey. So this is how I reached so far. I mean, my journey in a nutshell.
That is really, really amazing and very inspiring at the same time. That's so good. I feel really nice. Also, when you came out finally, that you were like, okay, this is my identity and this is what I want to do. So, I mean, in our daily lives, we come across so many people. Like, if we are in a friend circle, like a social circle, we have a professional circle, and there are also people that we have to interact on a daily basis for chores. So, how did those people take it, or like, what did any changes come in all these areas in your life?
So if you're talking about my family, I right now I only the people that matter to me are only my immediate family members. That's my father, mother, sister, grandmother, mom, sister, and cousin sister. Other people don't matter to me because they actually are not ready to understand me. They're not ready to talk with me. They're not ready to while my mom in the beginning, you know how it is, no, Indian parents are almost on the lines of being Bollywood actors and actresses. They like to be
I know.
dramatic. So my mother was like, I don't care about your sexuality, but you should not do another drag performance. My dad was like, sexuality is a sin, drag is okay as long as you get paid for it. So I had parents actually with two opposite points of view, and I'm like, I was like, hold on, I think I need to give them time and space. And that is exactly what I did. For 1.5 years, we were fighting over phone calls. There was silence on both ends. We realized that we were hurting each other. And ultimately, what my parents did was they moved into Bangalore to get to know me better. My dad was in Delhi, mom was in Kerala, dad was working in Delhi. And they moved to Bangalore to know me better, understand me better. What is this change that went into my life? Right now, it's reached a point where my mother is actually helping me pack my drag suitcase whenever I have to travel. Like 2 or 3 weeks back, she actually helped me zip up my jumpsuit, put glue on my wig, and all of that. So she helps me right now. Like from where she was like, "Don't do another drag performance," she reached a point where she's saying that I'm ready to help you. I mean, that is a great, what do you say, a trajectory where she's ready to, support me. Friends, I would say, people who really understand you will stick by you. People who don't understand you, you can't do anything about it. You can't tell them, why are you doing this to me? You can't hold on to it. What I decided is people who are ready to be with me will be with me. People who are not ready to be there with me, they will move on. And that is exactly what I've been doing so far. I just, it's for me, I'm not, there are times when I feel really bad. I feel very alone. But then what can I do? This is life. This is how it is. There are strangers I meet. Some of them really appreciate what I do. Some of them are very homophobic and transphobic. And towards homophobic and transphobic people, I understand they come from a place of ignorance, a place of hatred, that they don't understand what is my story. They don't try to understand what is my journey like. So for them, I actually ignore, I block, I mute, I do all of that. Or I give them, I'm like, you want a piece of me? I'll give you a piece of me by giving them a sassy remark. Or I just write, now that thank God for GIFs, now I just put a GIF saying that nobody cares. Because honestly, nobody cares about your hatred. So like I told yesterday also in a live session that it's easy to give hatred. It's easy to give hatred. Hatred just comes like this. In seconds it will come. But it's not easy to give love. It's never easy to give love. And I keep singing that song also. Love's never easy. But you need to make an effort to love someone. Honestly, with all your heart, you need to love someone. So this is how my environment or people have treated me. And I learned hard-earned lesson, but I'm grateful for these lessons.
It is really good to know. I think somewhere, personally, I'd say like each one of us, somewhere we struggle with acceptance, somewhere we struggle with, being taken for who we are. And especially in cases of like people like you, being the variable being so different from what people usually expect. I think it comes with additional difficulties, but your spirit is really inspiring, and the way you've taken it, it's really nice. Also, sir, at the same time, I would like to ask, this is in outside, like your life. So when you're on stage, so what is your mindset when you perform? And is there any fear that people like your audience, some audience remarks or something that holds you back or something that plays subconsciously in your head when you're on stage?
See, every performer you ask any performer, theater, music, actor, you ask any of them, they're always nervous before they do their first stage performance, first take, anything, first concert, anything. The same thing is with me. I also face the same thing. Obviously, I have been, there have been audience where they just say one remark just like that, and they don't have to say it. Like an instance was when in Hyderabad I went to perform for first time, and I said, "Oh my God, this lover of mine, he heard that, he saw me perform like this. And you know what he did? I put the question out to the audience. And the guy in the audience said, oh, he ran away. For me, I'm like, oh shit, now what do I do? And people are laughing. Audience and people are laughing actually. So I said, yeah, he ran away. He ran away from, then I started saying the places in Hyderabad, from Banjara Hills to Jubilee Hills to, so I said, I took the ball in my court. The ball was in his court. I said that give it back now. I gave it to you, now give it back now. Like that. So basically, so I did it with a sassy remark. Being sassy is what you call it. So I never give the power to the audience. I give power as in I give energy, but I never let them put me down. Like I am the drag queen, you will respect me because I am on stage, you are not on stage. That's how I go on stage and I perform. So this is my mentality when I go. So whatever it's good. So I always say to a performer, a new drag queen or whoever it is, that it's good to have nervousness. See, the thing is, I will be scared if you say you are not nervous. That means you're too overconfident. So then to have a little nervousness is great. It's great. And then you use that nervousness to actually do amazing performance. So that is what is usually my mentality whenever I do a stage performance.
I couldn't agree more with that, sir. Because like being a performer myself, I dance once in a while, so I understand what a role it plays. But the way you handle the audience critic, like how it jumped in the middle, I think that is something that all of us can take inspiration from again and learn. I'm just realizing there are so many inspiring bits about your story, and it's amazing. So, is there any special care you take of your mental health, or like anything specifically you have to do?
So, thing is, what I do, I started doing it recently after the lockdown because with lockdown, I realized that mental health has gone for a toss for a lot of people. They honestly, it's been really horrible for a lot of people. And what has happened with me is like I started doing more of positive affirmation sort of, talks and all of that. I started listening to that. So that is what I've been doing all this while to take care of my mental health. Because I know for the fact that I will feel really, really pulled down by seeing what is happening around the world. And I should not do that. I should not give in to that kind of negativity. So what I do is the biggest right now positive person, she's no more. Her name is Maya Angelou. I go back to her teachings. I go back to her way of dealing with life and see how she dealt with life and use that for me. And that's what I do for taking care of my mental health.
Sorry, I haven't been audible. Yeah, that's great, sir. I mean, somewhere we need to find some inspiration or something that helps us keep holding on to the purpose we believe in or the things we want to do.
Exactly.
Talking about lockdown, so how has lockdown affected the queer community in specific, and like you were talking about you right now?
So in terms of the whole community, we had a ways of means to earn money, and that suddenly got shut down. And also for the fact that we had to live with families that are homophobic and transphobic. So that sort of affected all of us completely. And then when you go to social media, social media is not some accepting a place. There are a lot of homophobic and transphobic elements out there as well. So ultimately, it's been really hard on us. It's been quite a struggle for us because we want to be like, let this lockdown be lifted so that we can actually go out and be ourselves. Because ultimately, right now, we are all not in a great place. We are not in a great place. I'm being very honest. I'm not going to be like, no, we are okay, we are happy. No, I can't say that. You can't say that. I've heard stories where trans women don't have food. I've heard stories where a bisexual girl was actually committed suicide because she was forced to go through conversion therapy. I've heard gay men, a gay boy being tortured by his parents. So there are so many stories that are coming, but we can't. And then tortured by his parents, being called by all those homophobic slurs by his classmates. So many stories like that keep coming up. But ultimately, like how I said earlier, it's like people are not ready to give love. Even in the most difficult situation, people are not ready to understand each other. And that is something which we need to work upon.
I think, given the circumstances, it is all the more needed. And there is so much going on, and we get to hear in a protected, privileged environment. We get to hear so little of it. Definitely an eye opener, sir. Um, um, now that we're talking about the community, is there something you'd like to tell your fellow Pride community members who are scared to come out of the closet and live bravely? Because I do understand it is not a very supportive world out there, and as you said, there are so many things that bog the people down and push them down. So but like the way you live proudly and so many others do, so anything any message out there?
I keep saying that it was not rosy journey for me. As much as I come from a privileged background, uh, like for 25 years of my life, I was not ready to come out of the closet because I was battling my own demons. I was battling Christianity as a religion. So there were so many things that I was dealing with. Ultimately, what I realized was that I became independent to understand myself. Like I was not dependent on anybody. If you can be independent in your own way, and you don't have to fight your parents and fight the society. You will ultimately have to do that after coming out of the closet. But if you have the mental strength to bear all of that pain which is going to come, then come out. Otherwise, I would suggest you to just read about the community, read about inspiring stories, uh, make a, make yourself understand that you are not alone. Like there was a point of time when I thought I was alone. I thought I will be not meeting any person like me, a person who was a queer cis man and at the same time a drag queen. I never thought in my when I came out or before I came out that I would meet someone like that. But I now I have a freaking family like people with like that. So ultimately, just know that you're not alone. There is a community ready to accept you the way you are, and just keep loving yourself, keep understanding yourself, because that is really important. And
Yeah.
the last thing I would say is, I would say is that even though I say love's never easy, love actually liberates you. So if you try to love someone, even if they hate you, by saying, you know what, I am nothing against you, but I still like you as a human being, it's a different thing altogether. It's a different ball game altogether. So we have to try doing that. So this is my last bit towards my LGBT community members.
I think it does take guts to love, and specifically to love yourself the way you are, and continue being who you are to yourself and to everyone else. And reading about the community and watching, looking for inspiration, it works. It would work. I mean, I can't comment on that personally, but just feeling that feeling of that, there are others like me out there. It is amazing, and I hope people out there who are struggling with it are helped with this. And so, last question I want to ask you: the next time you step out of your house, or like this next time you step on stage, is there something different that you would like to see, or any change you want to observe?
The change that I will observe as a person, I'm not going to expect anything from the audience. The change I would expect from myself is how I view other people. I will not hold grudges. I will not hold any sort of uh, say preconceived notions about a person. I would actually accept them the way they are because I am an extrovert and I love meeting people. So for me, during the lockdown, I realized that I people, otherwise I will go mad. So for me, I'd be treating people more differently. I'll be treating them more with a humane approach. When they deserve love from me, I will give them love. And if they don't deserve love from me, that's true. But then this is how this is going to be my take, right? Before I get on stage on how to deal with people better. That's what I'm going to do.
I think all of us need to learn that actually, because we end up spoiling our own selves and our own mental health in the entire ball game of grudges and this and that and those little things.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
it is actually something we need to learn, focus on, and not just learn, but also manifest it and practice it every single day. Loving others and yourself just the way we are, and looking at people as humans and not as not as I'd say disfigured parts of our glasses. So people
Exactly.
are the way they are. We need to look at. We need to just be human, I think. So
Exactly.
that brings us to an end of this interview. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation, sir. And I'm sure our audience and our viewers are very inspired right now, and they have a lot of insight and inspiration about your community and about humanity in general. Any last words you would like to say, sir, concluding?
If you want to search me, you can search me on Instagram. It's known as Maya the Drag Queen. And if you want to ask questions, go ahead and ask questions there. That'd be great. Ultimately, what I said like earlier, I said love liberates. Liberates. Basically, it is true. Where there are moments when I have met friends and I just gave them really loving words, and that is something which healed both of us and whatever hurt that we went through. So that's what I want to partake with. Just keep loving people, and you get love in return, and that is something which will heal us completely. Don't focus on hate. We have so much of hate out there in the world. Don't focus on it.
Yes. Surely, thank you so much, sir. Very inspiring.
Thank you, Arushi.
Personally, when I checked out your profile, when I got to know about you, I mean, it was a new experience as well, and now I know so much more about that culture, and so much more that we don't know.
You're right.
And yes, we feel very honored and inspired right now. So thank you so much, and I hope
Anytime.
everyone enjoyed this as much as I did. So thank you so much,
I,
sir.
I, thank you so much, and keep in touch.